Well, hello, Victoria Rumble Room community. My name is John Juricic, Robin Adair. How are you today?
Well, John, I couldn't be better. Great to be back in another Rumble room, and there is so much good to talk about, and some things that are a little disturbing. I think we'll get into all of that over the next few minutes on this show, and we really appreciate people watching the new improved Rumble Room. We're back, and please, if you're on YouTube, you can subscribe to our show, and there's ways to get a hold of us on all the different platforms. We're available night and day with this new live format. And John, we're gonna roll right into our first guest because she's standing by. We're very excited to have her back, and this our first couple of weeks back in the saddle. And we're talking about Judi Tyabji, author, commentator, former MLA, and here she is from the sunny Okanagan. Judi, welcome back to the Rumble Room.
Well, thank you for having me back.
I'm not so sure. I'm not so sure this is live, and we're just sort of rolling with the punches here.
No, no,
It's
no.
so great to see you.
Yeah, it's good to see you guys too.
So, Judi, we're going to launch right into it. We've got so much to talk to you about. You're a well-known federal liberal, and when we
Right.
talked to you previous to the a big election, and actually we took our hiatus just as that election rolled out, and Mark Carney won. And
Yeah.
what I'll tell you off the top is that I've been generally impressed with Carney because a lot of things that Carney is promising, at least, are things
Right.
out of the Tory handbook. So he's
Right.
talking about industry, he's talking about even pipelines, all the things that Justin Trudeau seemed to hate. Carney is saying we got to get on board, and at least on the surface, he poses as a Trump whisperer. So.
Right.
My first question, I guess, is I'd like to hear your thoughts about his performance. That's what I have to say about it. What do you
Right.
think, Judi, about Mark Carney and how he's done so far?
I think that Carney has his best statements have been the things he's not said. And
And what do you
so
mean
all
by
you have to
that?
do,
What do you mean by that?
well, you just have to watch his body language. The fellow gets a 10 out of 10 for diplomacy. And uh, I think it's really refreshing that he's not a politician. And that means that he comes to a lot of these things with the same response that I think most Canadians would have when they're watching him. And then he doesn't say what we're all thinking, but it's right there on his face. And there have been a lot of memes and social media channels set up that have a lot of fun with that. So I think the best thing he's doing is not saying what he thinks and just getting the job done. He's not getting mired down in an emotional response to what's happening. He does say the words, we are in a time of crisis. This is going to be expensive, but he doesn't say, this is going to be expensive. We're never going to get through it. His attitude is calm. We are in a crisis. We are at a crossroads. We have the most powerful country in the world talking about annexing us, and we are very dependent on them in terms of trade. And he's stayed really focused. And one of the things that I like is he's focusing on what he can control. He's not making big statements. He's not trying to influence the outcome with rhetoric, which can be really right now
Judi,
not
Judi,
good.
hold on, hold on,
Right.
hold on. Stop the presses here. I
Okay.
love the answer. Okay, great answer. And the objective side of me goes yes, but
Mhm.
the subjective side of me is taking over, and I think is
Okay.
taking and I think that's generally how we react now around politics. Is
Right.
really it is not calm, and it's not object and not thinking through. I voted Liberal in February or March, whenever the election was.
Right.
And I wanted results right away, and they're not
Way back
here.
then.
And I'm
Way back then.
feeling it. I'm feeling it. I want him to go. You're gonna stuff to now. Things are coming out where I go, oh, okay, okay. But how? I think he's got to balance that better. Are you sensing that out there? We're not patient. We're
I
upset.
I think that he cannot take on your emotions, John. I think he just can't. I think look, I think anyone in his position has a binary choice. Get it done or talk about it. Those are the only choices. If he takes time to comfort us, which we had a prime minister like that during COVID, and at first everyone loved him, and then they all cannibalized him.
Oh, did you love him? I never did love him. Anyway,
Oh, during COVID, if you look at his, I know you didn't, Robin, that's a you thing. But
Yeah.
if you look at the public response during COVID, he was there, he was the reassuring voice, he was talking to us every day. And that made him a very easy emotional target because he was there for us emotionally. And with Carney, I feel like we hired the guy that we thought was the best guy for the job. We literally, as Canadians, went, okay, I'm putting aside whatever I was saying 3 months ago because it's not relevant anymore.
Yeah.
This guy stepped up. Let's give him a chance because the threat is real. I mean, let me just give you one example that comes to mind that we could be spending a lot of time worrying about, and that is our water. Just specifically, one of the first things Trump did when he was inaugurated was cancel the Columbia River Treaty talks. Now, we had a deal on the Columbia River Treaty. We had it last November. There were a lot of people saying, let's sign it right now before there's a regime change. And it was not signed. And Trump came in and he canceled it. And he has talked repeatedly about the big faucet up here. We're not talking about it a lot anymore. That's okay. Because we're all aware that's a big threat to us.
well, there's going to be a lot of that talk coming, Judy, when we have these Kuzma talks upcoming, which is, I think, one of the reasons Carney's in Mexico right now talking to the president of Mexico is because they've got to figure out some strategy in dealing with Trump, because I think the Americans are going to come and play a lot of hardball with us on this whole renegotiation or restructuring of the North American Free Trade Agreement. I want to ask you. You're a politician. You're at heart. You were
politician.
well, you were long enough, right?
I was.
You were there for a long time. You were there for a
Yeah.
long time, and you were
Yeah.
You
were
got
so
the DNA. You got
you'd
the
never
DNA.
know
How
it,
about
Judy,
that?
because
I
you
do
were
have
so
the DNA for
you were
sure.
so you were so young when you started. That's why you can
I
look
know.
the way you do, and you were in politics forever, it seemed. But anyway, you know that the public usually gets in a real rash about deficit spending and debt
Yes.
and all of that. It used to be the mantra when we had conservative government in Canada, and that was the big thing. We're
Yeah.
going to be even-handed. We're going to even John Horgan managed to leave a budget surplus when he left office for David Eby, which got ground through in about 15 seconds. But people appreciate that. We know there's a crisis. We know we have to rapidly spend on things like military, helping to
Yeah.
support workers that are going to be out of work right now, at least for the short term, maybe the long term, in things like aluminum and steel and the car industry. But all of that said, there's going to be sticker shock when people see $100 billion deficit and a
Yeah.
giant debt in Ottawa. And I see Carney's trying to couch all of that. Poilievre question period, what's the debt? What's the debt? And Carney's being cagey. But do you think Canadians will be forgiving of this? Do you think Canadians are going to look at the big picture and say, well, this is what we're going to have to do to get past this? Do you think Canadians will be understanding?
Well, you asked two questions. You said, "Are we going to be forgiving, and are we going to be understanding?" I don't think we're going. I don't think we're going to be forgiving at all. I think it's painful. I don't think. I think Canadians, all of us by nature, most of us by nature, we don't like deficit and debt spending. We don't. Are we going to be understanding? Yes, I think so. And I think that the lack of forgiveness is going to be on the tariff wars, on those who are sympathetic with, for whatever reason, the Trump agenda. Now, I think intellectually, and this is where Carney has been approaching the Trump government agenda on tariffs, that they are switching their entire economic model from global free trade to protectionist to regional investment to regional economic development, etc. That is an actual intellectual shift in how they're going to determine investment and job creation in the US. And it's having giant earthquake effects to the rest of the world. And what Carney did intellectually is said, okay, that's a hard pivot from the global trade, focus from the 1980s on. So that means we're going to do a hard pivot. And thank goodness he has the brain set up for that kind of thing, where he can go to existing projects like the ones he's picked out and said, we're going to take existing projects and we're going to facilitate their expansion. That's good. It's not government doing, it's government facilitating. That's what government should do. I think where we have to be nervous about this investment, and watching it kind of carefully, is when it comes to housing. Government is terrible at actually investing in housing and doing housing. However, if government can facilitate the private sector in housing, that's different. But we've had so many changes in our housing area in the last few years. In British Columbia, for example, getting rid of those short-term rentals, bringing in the vacancy tax, and the effects of the NDP's policies there are being felt at a time when we had higher interest rates. Now we've got investment insecurity. So people have stopped spending money at a time where now developers are laying people off. That was happening independent of the tariff wars. So now we've got government coming in and saying, we have a housing crisis. We have developers saying, we can't sell our units, right? In Greater Toronto area, we have record bankruptcies happening for people who should be able to afford their housing. So those are different issues. What I hope doesn't happen is I hope we don't see the federal government saying, well, even with incentivizing the private sector, they're not doing anything because they're already having problems. I don't want government to intervene in that. It's going to have to play out. And I don't know how it's going to play out other than helping Canadians be able to afford housing, which is a different model from what he's talking about right now. Right now, he's talking about prefab, getting into below market housing. Okay, let's see how that works. So will Canadians be forgiving? No, I think we're all feeling a little bit sick at the thought of this much debt. We have to do something. And what we do, if we invest properly and we generate wealth from the primary sector, mining, LNG, oil and gas, pipelines, opening up the infrastructure in the north as we have ice-free water, those are great. That's nation building. Getting too involved in the housing could backfire.
This is a great segue for me.
Okay. Well, that was what it was all about, John.
Thank you. We planned all that, didn't we?
We're all here to help you, John.
That's right.
Okay.
That's right.
So, let's pull back a little bit and do some context thinking here.
Okay.
So I've been around private business for so long, like now 6, 7 recessions I've worked through. I've had multiple businesses. I've been involved in tons of community activities. I have not sensed the kind of scenario that we're in right now. Okay.
Yeah.
I do not feel like I can predict how this is going to work out, how we're going to work ourselves out of it. Hence the additional anxiety with the debt and the deficit. It used to be, okay, well, we get this government in and we kind of know how all that's sort of gone. I'm looking into a blank screen almost. Yeah. Within that context, I want to talk about, please, where did that entire climate agenda go? And where is it sitting? Okay? Because it's gone. It really drove the last 10 years of policy. I mean, both here and in the US. Environmental policy, climate policy, human resource policy. Where is it gone? And is it just sitting down there? Carney, I mean, used to help advise Trudeau on this stuff.
Yeah.
Like, has he really changed? What is your...
Go ahead, John. Good question. Good question.
I don't think he's changed at all. I don't think he's changed at all. I think it's it's a hierarchy. So where has the climate policy gone? That's a good question, because no one in the world is talking about it, because we have bigger issues: genocide, fascism, white supremacy, tariffs. I mean, I could keep going, but at the end of the day, the planet is on fire. And if you follow anything at all about the shift in climate globally, the cost of climate, the fact that you can't get insurance in a lot of places anymore for your houses because of the sea levels rising, extreme climate events and the impacts, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. It's a massive issue. However, I do think that it is part of the underpinning to regional economic development if we do it right. That's where I see hope. And what do I mean by that? When I got involved in politics back in the 80s, back in the day, we were just starting these free trade agreements. And what happened was we had massive dumping of Washington fruit into the British Columbia market, and it was killing off the farmers. What's happening today, I can tell you right now, you go to any farmer's market, and it is overrun with everybody trying to buy local produce.
Right.
So with a bit of a shift, with a return to value-added manufacturing, which is happening, if we heard Carney's speech a few days ago where he was talking about no more raw log exports as part of our policy, we're going to shift and we're going to return to regional value-added manufacturing of our primary products. Yes, please. Yes, please. That's what we should, in my opinion, that's what we should have been doing, at least in parallel to these free trade agreements. But we couldn't, because every time we tried to protect regional economic development, we got a challenge from the United States saying, you know, this is violating our free trade agenda. Now we can actually make an economic argument for rebuilding local glass manufacturing for our wine industry, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So I do, and that, by the way, reduces the carbon footprint, gets everybody re-engaged in community, and is better for the environment. It's just a small thing, but if everybody's doing it in Canada, it shifts the carbon footprint.
I wished it was that easy. You sound a little bit like Mike Harcourt now, because Mike
Oh,
Harcourt
stop.
was the guy he brought in remanufacturing. I remember going to a remanufacturing plant they set up in Chemainus along the highway there, and they showed us all the things they could do, and this is going to be the restructuring of our whole forest industry, is getting into remanufacturing and products that can be more refined, and we're going to compete with IKEA and all that. And what they found, it wasn't competitive, and they got out of it
No,
like
it
really
wasn't
quickly.
competitive. And nobody's ever said I sounded like Mike Harcourt, because his business plans are too top heavy.
Well,
And that was,
he tried these things though, as I'm
no,
saying,
but
like
you can't,
Harcourt. Remember, he
tried it
tried
in a
selective
unionized.
logging with helicopters, all sorts of fun
No,
stuff,
that's
right?
ridiculous. I mean, those business plans are always theoretical ones that never work, because they never actually model the
Well, it
cost
wasn't a
of, for
theoretical
example,
plan. They opened a mill. There were people working in it, and then it went out of
yes,
business. Yeah.
it was a theoretical plan because the government intervened. It was top heavy. It was never going to work. This has to happen with people actually getting into a local economy where you don't have top heavy, high cost of manufacturing, high labor costs, high cost of transportation, helicopter logging. Come on, like it doesn't work. It's only, that's
Well,
what I'm
that was a
saying.
problem. I know. Well, some of these things that they talk about now they're talking about recapturing carbon before they're able to open up pipelines out of Alberta. And Premier Smith sounds like she likes the idea. I just watched a panel on CBC, and sometimes I find it very difficult to watch CBC panels because they tend to be
Yeah.
so incredibly negative about anything that smacks of economic development or oil and gas, and that we're destroying the planet. And
Right.
Chantal Hébert, the queen of hairstyle, was on, and she was suggesting that that the new pipelines are a faint hope because the BC NDP doesn't like the idea. The First Nations haven't approved of it, and of course, Quebec doesn't like pipelines, so there's no future for it. But Carney keeps steadfastly saying that now we've set up an operation in Calgary that's going to oversee development. I hear Danielle Smith making the right signals. Would you be surprised after all of this to see them announce a new oil pipeline, maybe to Prince Rupert? It's been talked about forever.
I would not be surprised. And all I have to do is say Site C and LNG and the NDP. I mean, how adamantly opposed were they? They signed the Green Party agreement with Andrew Weaver, and then boom, they were Site C, LNG. So very soon it'll be David Eby's idea to have a pipeline, I'm sure.
Oh, I love watching him with his hard hat at the LNG plant in Kitimat, like it was his idea.
Yet
Honestly,
again,
when you think,
perfect segue for me. Man, oh man, it's like we planned
there you
these
go.
questions.
We're just here to help you, John. Really.
All right.
Call me Mike Harcourt.
Let's have some fun because we're having fun now.
You don't get compared to Mike Harcourt enough, I bet. That's the problem.
Ever. It's the hair.
It's there. That's right.
All right, let's talk politics. All right. Okay, federally,
Mm.
Federally, I have always sort of hopped between parties. Sometimes conservative, sometimes liberal. I'm generally in the middle. I have not done that in BC. I have never voted NDP, although I
Okay.
certainly did tend to like John Horgan. He was buddy. I saw him around the neighborhood and all those sorts of things, and certainly he did implement some policies that were business friendly, which is sort of where I live. Politics in BC, we've started to hear some rumors that EB might be in some trouble politically,
Oh,
that in
yeah.
fact Adrian Dix might be chomping at the bit again.
Hmm.
This does not look good for these guys. Federally, they're done. People are starting to look at alternatives. Some of that base is not going to stick with them.
Mhm.
Uh, they've got a squeaky small majority. What do you think, Judy? What's happening in BC politics with the NDP?
I think, look, I'm not on the inside of the NDP, but a lot of the people who are people I knew in the 80s and 90s. And I think that's the problem. For you to even mention Adrian Dix when he was Glenn Clark's MA, in 91. So yeah, and I mean John Horkin was also from that era. David
Yes.
Eby came a little bit later, but not much later. You've got Mike Farnworth in there still. All the people still making the ideas are those people. So you can't have a refresh without new people. Meanwhile, what about the other parties? Is that a segue to you, or should I continue?
Well,
Well,
I mean,
please continue.
let's face it. John Rustad isn't lighting the world on fire with his, I mean, it strikes me. This reminds me a little bit of what happened to liberals for the longest time there, back in the hallowed days of the mid '90s, when there were all these splinters. There was, of
Yeah.
course, I believe, a party that Judi Tyabji and Gordon Wilson started. That was a,
Yes.
and then
So there was the
there was
the
the
BDA,
amazing.
there was BC Reform,
There
there
was
was
David
still the
Mitchell with
Soap
his
Reds.
David Mitchell,
Yeah,
the independent liberal. I mean,
yeah,
there was all these fractures around, and you wondered why Gordon Campbell couldn't get elected. And then you see the same sort of fracturing going on with this BC conservative crowd. And I don't know,
yeah.
I have nothing against John Rustad, but I don't know if he's got the political ability to pull this all together and build the coalition that traditionally represents the center to center right
Yeah.
in the province.
I think that the ship sailed for him when Kevin Falcon pulled the rug out from his own candidates, and John Rustad didn't take the best of them and invite them in. That was his sweet spot
Yeah.
because you look at the Okanagan and you look at the new party that's being formed, Centre BC. All of that happened because Rustad couldn't bring in the best people, and he would have won a majority if he had. He would have won a lot of seats where independents ran instead. I mean, enough. He almost got a majority anyway. So that's how I feel, and I like John Rustad, and
Yeah.
a lot of the MLAs elected with the BC Conservatives are very good, and I think that they are probably doing a good job for the constituents. I don't know. I'm not following it that closely, but right now,
It's
Rustad
just
is
more
trailing.
the fracturing, all these parties. No one seems to be able
Yeah,
to march. Because it would seem to me, to John's point about David Eby,
right.
it's a pretty inviting target right now if you're on the other side of the floor. And you'd think
Yeah,
if they were really on side, they'd be able to pick the NDP off. And you were talking about Mike Farnworth and all the veteran
yeah,
NDPers. When they
yeah.
started, a groundswell of support for the NDP was in the interior, was in the working hard hat crowd. It was the people that
Yes.
worked in the forest, worked in the mining, worked in even in the putting in the new dams, and
Yeah.
those people, for the most part, from what you see in the polling, have turned away and are now looking at the conservatives, which is
Yes.
interesting. But young conservative people are
Yeah.
looking to turn to the conservatives. So you'd think this
Yeah.
would all work in Rustad's favor and that this would be a really tough road now for David Eby, but I'm not so sure.
Well, the funny thing is, and this will be a bit controversial, but if Aaron Gunn took over the leadership of the BC Conservatives, he would bring in all of that same energy that Pierre Poilievre tapped into with those young, especially young men working hard who are just trying to get affordable lives for their families, the millennial guys. I think they would go for someone like Aaron Gunn because he's a populist who speaks his mind, and a lot of his opinions might not be popular with the urban people, but they definitely will resonate in the rural areas. So, and I just put him out as one of the people where I feel like, and this is global, this can be in the States, BC, Canada, whatever it is,
Yeah.
we have become so polarized in our opinions and so intolerant of each other that we can't have conversations where we hear each other without people start degrading into name calling, which is ridiculous. And the divide gets greater and greater. And to some extent, our leaders are part of that, because the first thing, what they call, oh, you're a liar, you're a liar, you're a liar. Well, as soon as you start calling people liars, there's no conversation going on. You
Yeah.
have to be able to disagree. And rural British Columbia has been completely abandoned from a practical point of view. And that's where BC's wealth comes from. It comes from rural BC. When you
Yeah.
go to the urban area, the urban rural divide they can't understand each other. I mean, it's almost like urban people, in my opinion, feel entitled to laugh at the opinions of rural BC, while rural BC is keeping our economy going. So
I'd like to dig a little deeper into this youth vote and youth demographic. Okay.
yeah,
Down in the States, after the murder of Charlie Kirk, I've now been made aware of how the youth vote on the right in the States is dramatically splintered into conceivably half a dozen different sections
right.
of really upset men, young men
Yeah, yeah,
who are expressing themselves in violent, vile ways.
yeah.
And I just don't know where that's all going to end. But I don't sense any of that kind of anger or frustration. Why aren't young people in Canada more mobile and more active? They don't have
I,
houses. They don't have jobs. They don't have futures. Like, how come what's your sense of that, Judy?
well, I see a couple of things happening. First of all, there are a lot of young men getting active and mobilized, and I see it because my daughters are married to two of them who are very active, and they are
Where are they active? What?
they're active. They will be showing up for the protests. They are voting conservative, and they are aware that we need social programs, but they feel that their taxes are too high and that they're not getting value for the taxes paid. And I also see a shift that I think is a little bit healthy, in that they do want to make sure that their wives, partners, whatever, can have a bit of a break in the earning side to have kids if they're going to have kids. And I like that, because when I was in that, there was this expectation that you got to make as much money as the guy, and you got to have the kids, and you got to be the primary care, all of that stuff. And it's too much for a lot of women. So I'm happy to see younger women feeling that they can take a break and not feel guilty, like that it is very important to be taking care of the home, and whether it's the male or the female. But from what I'm seeing, it is a lot of those guys wanting to be able to earn that money. And I do think, based on the announcements that I saw Carney making on, what I call Canada 2.0, but this industrial revolution of investment, that they will get those good jobs. They will get career. He refers to them as careers. They will have high paid careers. That's important, because this musical jobs thing that has been happening with Gen X and millennials, it doesn't give you that good mental health. But the second thing that's happening, I feel, in Canada even more than the US, is a mental health breakdown of young men. And it's serious. It's there's a feeling of despair, a feeling of how do I define myself? Am I worthy? And that breaks into many different things. And maybe in Canada, because we have better social programs, they will have a way to go that isn't a gun and shooting people. But I don't know. I mean, that's only what I see, is that I think as well that if people are showing up for protests, maybe the next thing is they get involved in politics. Maybe we will see a refresh of the political parties, because frankly, we need it. Way
Yes.
too many. it's just old people. It's just I go to these things. We're all grandparents, right?
But I think we need to redefine what our political parties stand for. I read the New York Times
Right,
quite a bit, and there's a lot of good thinking people that contribute to that. And there's a lot of talk there about, well, they talk about the Republicans and the Democrats, but you can easily see parallels with our system, where really
right,
it's not we don't have a left versus right society anymore to the same degree. It's not working people versus business people. It's more people who have had the good fortune of having high paid jobs in the information age, and they tend to be in cities, they tend to be educated, they tend to be able to sort of work above all the fray, while working people that traditionally did very well up sort of certainly post Second World War, able to
mhm,
own homes and raise families and send their kids to university, now are basically greeters at Walmart because they've closed so many of the opportunities for them. And those
right,
young people you're talking about with the mental health problems are the ones who are saying, I'm the first generation here that's not going to even come close to what my parents had. I'm not going to
right,
be able to afford any of these things. And there's tremendous feelings of discouragement. Why should I bust myself if I can't get
right.
ahead? How can I possibly ever own a home that's going to cost me $1 million to buy? I mean, there's all these impediments. Our generation, and of course, Judy, you're much younger, but our generation has
I'm
really
not.
been able to
You
benefit.
you are.
We're living the life for Riley. And I think
Right,
I see those young people out there for Pierre Poilievre, and I see and you see a lot of young people out for Donald Trump,
yeah,
and they're selling, I can make this land strong again. I can
yeah,
create these jobs,
yeah,
and I think there's misinformation hidden amongst that populism, but I do think that is the problem that needs to be solved. And it isn't solving it by saying everybody needs to go back to school. That's another thing that Mike
right,
Harcourt did, is he had this big program where he had mill workers showing up taking labs in how to run computers, and all these guys who worked at the Port Alberni mill were suddenly in computer labs, and we went and covered it, and these guys didn't know what they had
no,
no interest in
yeah,
doing that. We need to be able to reward working people again and give them an
yeah,
opportunity. I don't know how you turn it over and change it overnight, but the political parties need to start reflecting that, including the Democratic Party in the States and the Liberal
Yes.
Party in Canada. They can't just be the party of people who are university educated and watch the CBC for all their information. It has to
no,
be more
Or
I
the Rumble
agree.
broad-based,
Room.
more
Or
broad-based.
what? Yeah, or rumble room. Yeah,
Or
no,
the
I
Rumble Room.
totally
Yeah.
agree. I
Don't depend on
totally
the Rumble
agree.
Room. Yeah, right.
But you know, and again, taking mill workers and trying to make them computer people, that's a theoretical application of government resources. That's what I'm talking about when I say it doesn't work. So, you know, we do have to facilitate the opening up of the private sector. Talking about careers for young people is critically important, where they can see themselves in the same position for 10, 20 years. When they know that they're taking out a mortgage, they'll be able to pay that off. That's what we have to get back to. And those are the things that break down. And I've actually been saying for years, you can educate the common sense right out of people. Just because someone has a master's degree does not mean that they can contribute more to the economy than someone who maybe stopped in elementary school to go work in a mine. You know, they've got that practical experience. They understand, you know, what
Well, I
risk
hope they got through
management
more than
is.
elementary school, Judy. Let's maybe even like
I,
grade 10 or something, right?
I don't know. I think, Robin, when you look back at the history of British Columbia, a lot of our province was built with people who left elementary school. I
That's
mean, I
true.
think we
Okay,
even
okay.
have some of our greatest entrepreneurs left school to go into business. So I don't judge based on, like, to me, education is where you get it. You don't have to have a piece of paper. Some people have a lot more common sense because they're out in the world
Yeah.
dealing with the world. And to some extent, I do think that is what Carney brings to the table. Born in the Northwest Territories, grew up in Edmonton, and then went out into the world. Every success he's had, he has made on his own. You know, he's earned his dollars, and now he's bringing that in. I do think he has an understanding of how an economy works. When I keep talking about the primary economy, people in the urban areas are not generally engaged in a primary economy unless they're doing, you know, technology and they're creating something from scratch. But it's out in the rural areas where we're generating our wealth, and then those jobs in the urban areas are service jobs or whatever they're doing, bankers or insurance or whatever. So Anyway, I think that we've lost that understanding in BC. I hope we get it federally. We have to stop it, going back to British Columbia politics. I don't really see anyone who understands the complexity of British Columbia. And going back to your comment, John, about the climate, I mean, everybody, even those millennial guys who are showing up angry, who want good jobs, they recognize we have environmental problems. You know, we are going to hit the wall on water. We have issues with air quality from time to time because of wildfires. What about our food? You know, our supply chain. There was a something came out yesterday, the day before, that we've got a huge run on our food banks, and that we're failing when it comes to food security. That's just a planning problem. With the amount of land we have and the amount of people we have, and public education, we could build that into public education. Food security
Yeah.
could be solved. So I just think that all of us have to take responsibility for where we are right now. And if we had it easy in the past, maybe it'll be a little harder, but give people opportunities, and I think they'll show up.
So Judy, I didn't realize that that my questions today would actually be within some sort of thread, but they are, but they actually are.
Because you
And
put so much thought into them, John.
all
That's why.
right, I'm just sort of, that's the thing about doing this live. They're sort of
Yeah.
randomly coming out of my head.
Perfect.
Nonetheless, they are sort of following a stream of thought here, and that being that I look to the future and I just it's almost impossible to predict where we're going to go.
Mhm.
And so I want to talk to you about artificial intelligence first with a story and then your ideas about it.
Okay.
So I started a tech company late 90s through the 2000s, and that was an online education company where we built online education tools, okay? Primarily content. Back then, I had maybe 30 developers that would sort of make the web development site, the interactivity, another 20 graphic designers. Okay, I'm doing the same thing now. I'm creating micro modules. The way education is delivered is so dramatically different.
Yeah.
Myself and another person. Okay, two. We went from 50 to two.
Yeah.
The technology's changed dramatically. I can do it all by myself, and I can use artificial intelligence. Tell me your thoughts on how this is going to impact everything. And are our governments cognizant of this massive change?
Wow. Okay. Those are a lot of questions. So first of all, AI will change everything,
Yep.
and also in some areas change nothing. And it's a little bit like I'm going to introduce crypto alongside AI, because
Hmm.
crypto is changing everything and also nothing.
Hmm.
And what I mean by that is both of these things, which are 100% human derived, that then develop a life of their own figuratively, uh, these things rely on massive amounts of energy, power, massive amounts. So that's also changing everything, because we don't have enough energy to support everything that we currently know we're going to need in the next few years.
Right.
And AI's consumption of energy is increasing at an exponential rate. I'm just
Huge.
learning
It's
how
huge.
much.
Yeah.
Same with crypto. Crypto is about to take over the world when the Trump administration passed a rule in the spring that for American banks to have USDT as their currency, USDT tether, right, where it has to have assets have to be actually lodged at the bank equivalent to the USDT. Very clever move, transformative move, identifying USDT as a standalone currency pegged to the US dollar. So as those assets go into those banks to back up USDT, you're restabilizing the foundation of the American economy in a crypto world. Great idea. I mean, somebody was thinking about that for a while. So we're seeing that the money is already changing. But as soon as the power goes out, we can't access crypto. You go to a bank machine, if the power's out, okay, we're seeing random weird power outages every now and then. And it means nothing changes for us as humans when we need to breathe, we need to eat, we need to sleep, we need to drink water. AI and crypto have nothing to do with that. AI will absolutely change the world in every single way. And I know it's hard when you say, what's it going to be like 5, 10 years from now? Well, I mean, many people will go further and further into a virtual world as they have a harder and harder time with the real world. We're seeing that now. And that is affecting not just mental health, but the development of the brains of young people. All of my grandchildren will have different brains. My granddaughter now is, I think, almost 9 months old. She, from the time she was 4 months old, could recognize that when someone held a phone, they were taking a picture of her and she wanted to see the picture. Like, what? Okay, so, but by the same token, so AI is going to change everything, but at the end of the day, it's very similar to the generational change of computers and the internet. Every time we hit these massive changes in technology, we adapt. So while we will have a job loss in one area, we will have new jobs in other areas.
I agree.
And if we have more leisure time, we need to start to fill it with meaningful work, or we will have an ongoing spiral into mental health issues, people having physical issues with their bodies because they're sitting around all day. So that's how we have to be mindful in our lifestyle. But, AI will change everything. But at the end of the day, we have to make sure it also changes nothing. We have to make sure we still go for a walk and we enjoy nature, that we hear bird song, that we smell fresh air. We must do that. We must maintain our human experience, or we will lose who we are as humans. And I think that we have to have more
Lost in my multitude of questions, and my apologies for that, was which of these parties is representing that viewpoint that I agree with, the one you're just expressing?
Which political parties?
Yes. Is Carney
Well,
got this? Does he?
on
Oh,
the federal
he's
level,
big on that
he
stuff,
is the
isn't he?
first politician I have ever heard say that we will do an efficiency assessment of the overall operations of government with the goal of introducing AI so that we will eliminate inefficiencies. It was one of the first things he did. And he did say he has divided, and I'm really glad he did, operations from capital and investments and infrastructure investments. Because when you invest in infrastructure in the Canadian people, we have that for a long time. And he does have a business plan to backfill those capital investments. So that's great. There are so many ways we could streamline the operations of government at every single level using AI. And then we could free people up to actually do meaningful human things, one assumes. Get rid of a lot of the human capital that we're putting into administration and inefficiencies and redundancies and get government, like you could right now audit our provincial and federal government ministries, and you will find several ministries that have departments doing exactly the same thing, and they're
No.
in different ministries. No, you can, but AI could very easily look that up. And it doesn't even mean that you would have to get rid of the people who are doing duplicate jobs.
But maybe that would mean we could actually shrink the civil service, which wouldn't be the worst thing in the world. Judy?
We could. I mean, especially in our healthcare sector.
Shouldn't say that in
regional...
Victoria. Victoria doesn't like to hear that, but
yeah.
I think we're getting close. We're close to wrapping this thing, but I just want to. There's so much.
Which is very unfortunate. I could keep asking.
I mean, John is unveiling all these wonderful thoughts, and Judy, I can assure you, he doesn't have thoughts that often. So this is
really there you go.
Kind of a revelation here. But
Yeah.
I've been teasing about, God, what have I done? Poor old Mike Harcourt, poor old Chantal Hébert, John Rustad. They've all come under the old glaring eye. But I just want to say that I am actually fairly optimistic in the face of all of this. I think there are a lot of signals that we're moving in a positive direction. I mean, I think even that a nuclear capability was amongst the first 5 announcements by Carney, and there's going to be a lot more because a lot of these announcements had already been made earlier, but still, the economic development is going to have to include nuclear, and I hope people are getting their heads around it. We can't keep building dams. We need a lot of power to what you say about AI, and I'm very excited about Wob Canoe. Both John and I love the little Wob Canoe.
Everybody loves the Wobber, hey?
Everybody loves the Wobber. He's number one for premiers in the country right now, and he's talking about getting those barriers broken down with First Nations along that route to get that traffic to Churchill and get the icebreakers. I mean, there's a lot of optimistic talk going on right now in the face of this terrible, terrible scourge south of the border in the guise of Donald Trump. It seems to me that maybe Canada is growing up. What are your thoughts on that as we nearly say goodbye to you?
Oh, it's such a short question for you to be
It wasn't
asking.
even a question. It was a statement. I want you to ring in on my
Yeah,
statement. Go ahead.
I absolutely agree. I think Canadians have stepped up. I would change. I don't consider Donald Trump a scourge, by the way. Again, controversial comment,
Oh,
because
you're so
he is
nice,
doing.
though.
No, it's not just that. I think that Trump is a sign of the times. He represents where the United States is at today.
Oh,
And
that's true.
people should be also looking at the Democrats and saying that they need to be more attentive to what the people are saying on the ground before they will get those votes back. So,
Yes.
so Trump is doing what he was elected to do, and we are responding in a way that I am just so proud of Canadians, coast to coast to coast. I love the fact that the Coast Guard and the Navy have merged and that we're being more attentive to the North. I think our North has huge potential. I think that at the end of the day, it is the people of Canada who will determine what our future is going to be, and that we have untapped resources in our people, especially our young people. And when those young men stop feeling angry and start feeling like they have meaningful engagement and that they are being heard, we will see a sea change. And then they will feel like they can actually engage because they will feel like they have, they can lead their own generation, as opposed to, I know that a lot of them are angry that those of us old people, we voted for the Liberals and we put Carney in power, they would have had Polyev. I personally think that Carney's the right guy for the job for what we need done right now. I'm not sure how long he'll stay in that job. I don't think he's a career politician. I think he's someone who wants to know that he's come to fix a problem. And when it's humming, I think he'd be quite happy to hand off the baton and go back to what he was doing somewhere else. So we'll see. We'll see.
I want to thank you for joining us. This is a new format for us. I think we've all had a lot of fun, and I hope that you'll come to Rumble with us yet again in the future.
Sounds good. Thanks, guys. Always a pleasure.
Great to
Absolutely.
see
I'm
you
going
again,
to end the
Judi.
stream, but please don't end the Zoom call, Judi. Let's talk afterwards. Hold on.
Okay.